faith and obedience, and milk versus meat. Hebrews 5:9, and being made perfect, he became the author of eternal salvation unto all them that obey him. This is not referring to obeying all his commandments and everything he said in an outward way as if the demand is upon you. No, in the context of Hebrews, it is talking about not neglecting your salvation, holding fast to your profession, pressing on to the full assurance of faith, entering your rest, and partaking of Christ. That is what we are obeying. We are continually resorting to him as our everything. This is our obedience. He's not a roommate that left a bunch of commandments on the fridge and said, "Here's how you live in my house," then went off to heaven and will come back to judge us based on whether the kitchen is clean. No, he's with us, and we are to resort to him in everything. He's our focus, our enjoyment, and we are partaking of him. Only a saved person can partake of Christ. It's not that we are partaking of him so that we can be saved. We are saved because he is the author of an eternal salvation, and that salvation provides the obedience which we cannot come up with, as we've already discussed. Hebrews 5:11 through 14. Of whom we have many things to say, and hard to be uttered, seeing that you are dull of hearing. For when for the time you ought to be teachers, you have need that someone teaches you again with the first principles of the oracles of God, and are become such as have need of milk, and not of strong meat. For everyone that uses milk is unskillful in the word of righteousness, for he's a babe. But strong meat belongs to them that are of full age, even those who, by reason of use, have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil. So we are about to get into the verses that everyone uses to try to get everyone to say that you're going to lose your salvation in chapter 6. This is a little detour as he's trying to unfold something bigger. Sometimes when I speak, I can sense by the Spirit that someone cannot take this part and I will have to hold back. In this case, I believe this is what's happening with the writer. He wants to talk about the high priesthood of Christ, but you can see that this topic is so deep. There were things that he could not say because they could only handle the milk, not the meat. When he's talking about Christ, it's assumed that you already know you're saved. It's assumed that you're already coming to him boldly. It's assumed you understand the first principles, and when he says obey him, you're not going back to the law to try to define what that means. Someone who responds that way is perpetually under the milk, always continually going back and trying to figure out if he's saved. We'll talk about that in the next verses. He says they have become dull of hearing. We're talking about the milk, the introductory things. How do I know I'm saved? Am I saved? Then meat. Here are the contents of this great salvation you've received. He wants to go on to the meat, but they want to stay with the milk and keep relearning. You know the best way to keep going back to milk these days? Watch YouTube videos of works teachers. You may think that you're doing it to sharpen your skills in a debate, but actually you're exposing yourself to something evil. You're bringing yourself back in again and again to always argue the same points and never move on to where you can really give food to the household. The meat is for the regenerated sons of God who want to feast on Christ. That is different than just trying to convince people that they're a son of God in the first place. The meat is, now that you're a son, here is your diet. It's totally different than what you ate before you were saved. So, there are videos talking about how you're not saved, and people are morbidly fascinated by these and want to watch them to hone their arguments. But they're exposing themselves and bringing themselves back to milk all the time. At some point, we have to move past that stuff. Strong meat belongs to those who are of full age and who by reason of use have exercised their senses to discern good and evil. You come to a point where you say, I'm only going to expose myself to things that feed and bring me the meat, and I'm not going to expose myself to evil. My senses tell me immediately, no, that's off. I'm not going to listen to that. Shut that down. Do not keep going back to that stuff. You could be attracted to it like a fly to poop. You've already got plenty of word, especially if you get into the meat, to help people in that area.